The Messenger. This game has got to be among my favorite games of all time by now, and I'm really hoping that my video on it today can do it justice. From the writing, to the art style, to the level design, to the movement. It's all here. Even if you don't think so yet, believe me, there's a little something for everybody in this game. But without further ado, let's dive deeply into The Messenger. To kick off our plot, we have a simple sequence of events. We're introduced to our main character, Myloe the ninja, and it's made clear right off the bat that he's more interested in combat training and adventuring than he is in the sacred scrolls he's taught about in his village. Our village elder may be telling us that we should be more attentive and take these scrolls seriously, but honestly, there's nothing really here that's important. Blah blah, ancient curse, yada yada, demon king, and then something about taking place every 500 years, but really, who even cares at this point? Oh, okay, we've got a situation. So yeah, the Demon King shows up right on time and explains that it's been 500 years and he is now back to ruin everything once again. Fortunately, instead of immediately perishing to our overpowered foes, we are interrupted by the mythical Western warrior, also predicted in the scrolls we never paid attention to. He's the guy who's meant to save the land and stop the demons from ruining the whole world every time they come around in 500 years. And while he does force the demons to retreat, he goes no further, only handing us a scroll and telling us that there is a great importance in this scroll reaching the top of a distant mountain. Confused, but ready to finally get out of the village, we take the scroll and head towards our destiny. Once we're on our way, the game's truly begun. The only thing keeping our little ninja friend from being a regular jumping and attacking character is the Cloud Step ability. Taught by our ninja tribe, this maneuver allows you to jump in midair as long as you've hit an enemy, lantern, or projectile with your sword. You only keep the jump charge until you hit the ground or use it up, of course. This function is literally the mechanic that made me want to buy this game. Immediately. Even before unlocking all the other options that make the movement sick, you still get something wildly fun and unique to mess around with. But what help is Cloud Step coming at a jump like this? Well, might as well see what this portal is about. Boom! Introducing the shop and the shopkeeper. This is easily my favorite character in the game, and to tell you why, you'd probably have to read every word of dialogue he has. Even in the DLC, which we might get to later, he's witty, helpful, sarcastic, funny, and he's basically a genius when it comes to running his shop and finding all new decor for it. Shopkeeper is a keeper for me. Anyways, he gives us climbing claws, invented by John Guyton, so that we can escape the pit that we fell into, and suddenly the movement has already catapulted in terms of what we can do, and how open the platforming becomes. Getting to this point, we're almost done with the first area, Autumn Hills, when we run into our first boss, the Leaf Pile Monster. This boss is a really good introduction to fighting larger enemies who move how they want. Really simple stuff, but you'll be rewarded for trying different movements against different attacks. Overall, great intro boss. Once the Leaf Pile Monster's been dealt with though, we enter the Forbidden Temple area, which the shopkeeper tells us is the fortress where the Demon King resides. Our ninja decides he's going to end the demon here and now, but the shopkeeper knows that we aren't going to make it somehow. So, we stubbornly move along, fully intending to confront our enemy, when we realize that there is no bridge in place to cross this gap. Falling hopelessly into the catacombs below, we find this little phobican fellow named Necro who is petrified of the living dead. A little ironic perhaps. We save him from his fear trap and he teleports away, ready to fix that broken bridge as soon as we can find and save his 3 buddies. Hopefully we'll find him on our trip to the top of the mountain. At our first shopkeeper portal, we get the whole I told you so bit, as well as a bit of insight regarding a necromancer at the end of the area. A bit of jumping and climbing later, we find him filling certain rooms with baddies we gotta get through to open our way forward. Finally though, we chase him down. He reveals his true height, as well as revealing that he and his staff are both working together to follow the path of the villain as well as they can. The thing is, they decide to stop you from progressing out of the catacombs, and they're not very good at it. After a decently simple fight, we take them out, and they converse about having to possibly give up the way of villainy after all. In the end, they allow you to continue out of the catacombs and into the bamboo forest. Now, the bamboo forest is really fun. Without all the movement options you'll have by the end of the game, this area still allows you to do so much jumping around in every room. Even the shopkeeper tells us this is a pleasant world meant to offset the disturbing setting of the last one. Once we reach the final portal of the world, the shopkeeper actually tells us there's even no boss this time around. This world was purely just a fun moment for us to parkour and explore through. Continuing forward to the next area, we can see a little entrance across this fall that we can't quite reach. I guess unless there are plans for another bridge, we're probably not going to be making that. And now we're in the grotto. We've got bats, golems, more skeletons, and even more turtles. Before getting too far though, we reach another jump that we can't make and the shopkeeper gives us a glide suit to cross it with. The gap we saw earlier is starting to make sense now, however, we can't really end up getting back there. So, as you'd probably be able to guess, the gimmick to this area is the glide suit. You'll need to glide to fall slowly, glide up air drifts, navigate tight gliding spaces, and of course, you can attack underneath yourself while you're going. Cave crawling deep enough, we eventually come face to face with a giant golem who blocks our progress completely. Of course, we resort to violence and rid the golem of its mortal shell, when suddenly we need to glide around and fight the spirit from inside it with our ninja stars. This is our first 2-phase boss fight, and I'm a big fan of this one. Mostly because gliding combat done like this is somehow just really satisfying for my brain. After we destroy our opponent's will to fight, well, I'll just let you read this conversation. So we fly into the Quillshroom Marsh where we find all sorts of different mushrooms, both in platforms and the enemies. The shopkeeper tells us too much exposure to the area would turn anyone into a mushroom creature, and that there may be a Quillshroom monk somewhere here. We continue through the quicksand-filled areas before we do eventually run into the aforementioned monk. She attacks with Quillshroom spores, spawns enemies, fires spikes to each side, and she's equipped with a whip. I really like this fight because it's our first chance to scuffle with an enemy of our own size. The interesting thing about finishing this fight off is that instead of death, the monk is carried away by a greed demon. I know I haven't touched on this yet, but this orange guy you see every time you die, he's a greed demon. He'll reset you in time, with his only price being some of your time shards. Her being affiliated with one of these demons is interesting to say the least. Who was she before she was corrupted by the marsh? Too many questions, let's move on. We've arrived at the foot of the mountain we're meant to climb, the Searing Crag. Here we run into another obstacle we can't clear when the shopkeeper tells us about a new piece of gear he's got for us called a rope dart. He jokes that everyone will end up calling it the grappling hook, and just for that, I'll be calling it the rope dart for this video. With our new rope dart, we have so many more openings for platforming. We can latch onto these rings first of all, but we can also hit walls, lanterns, and enemies. Latching onto something causes you to slash the object, giving you another jump straight away, so we can get a bit of schmovement going on now. We zip and slide all the way through the Searing Crag, and while it is definitely more difficult and strictly vertical than most other worlds we've seen so far, we do eventually make it to the top where we meet two ogre giants, Kolos and Susis. For some reason, although they may seem like they have rocks in their skulls, these two recognize us as the message bearer, even though we've never been here. In fact, the Necromancer also knew who we were, and seemingly what our goal was. Regardless of how they know us though, they're only trying to test our sportsmanship as they launch into a tap-in, tap-out game to the death. Attacking one in the front and the other in the back, we finish them off and discover that they truly do know your motive. Seeing as you need a convenient way to get to the top of the mountain, they volleyball bump you all the way up to Glacial Peak and sit back down. As it turns out, they're really just waiting for this little plant to grow into something that's supposed to taste amazing in their cauldron of soup. Up at Glacial Peak, it's going to be hard to get around. We have icy surfaces, harrowing cliff sides, sparing enemies and lantern placement for movement options, and a few sections that will test your patience to move forward. This area is also one of my favorites to jump around though, because it really puts everything you've been doing to the test in a series of ways. It's really creative, and sometimes very difficult. Once we do finally reach the top of Glacial Peak, we've done it. We've finally brought the scroll to the top of the mountain like a proper messenger should, but instead of some wise elder who can interpret the wisdom of the scroll or something, we just see the shopkeeper with two other blue-robed figures. Right away, the short one blabs about doing the thing. Shopkeeper says we have one more test to pass before that happens, and our little ninja friend is properly confused. Was this not the goal of the mission already? Whatever. The prophet, as he's called, demands you hold the scroll into the air, which we need a surprising amount of instruction on. Once we raise the scroll higher than that, so that the prophecy might be fulfilled, a beam of light shoots into the air and begins to construct a giant tower right in front of us on the peak of the mountain. As soon as it's done, Shopkeeper shows that he's surprised we were actually able to do it. We need to find out what this prophecy is actually all about. The Tower of Time is a challenging gauntlet of parkour. This area is incredibly difficult compared to Glacial Peak, and it's easy to see how devious and tricky the developers were when putting this all together. We have lasers to dodge, hooks to grapple, quick moving walls, timed laser segments, teleporting gimmicks. It's the whole package. Once we get to our first portal within the Tower of Time, we find that the shopkeeper's shop is actually a room located in this tower, having the ability to connect all over the world for the sake of our adventure. Pretty neat, but space anomalies, magical blue-robed folk, Tower of Time? Something tells me we're part of a much bigger picture than we thought kicking this journey off. We find the peak of the tower, and our 3 friends standing on top waiting for us. Without much small talk, the prophet says now is the moment we either emerge as the chosen one, or not at all. At least this dude gets to do the thing. That seems like it's gonna be really fun for him. Well, you probably guessed it, this is a boss fight. It's a pretty neat fight, especially only having his hands to work with as platforms to attack his head from. He's got some cool attacks, but overall this boss is actually pretty tame, I found. After the fight, we meet with these mages in the tower and we're instructed to jump down a seemingly endless hole to, for once and for all, become the one from the prophecy. As we fall, things begin to distort and change. It's hard to tell whether we're moving down or even up at this point, and everything collapses. We're left standing still in a completely black room, presumably at the bottom of the Tower of Time. And what's with the new look? We're dressed like a badass now. When we go back to the Tower of Time, we see it appear in an area known as the Cloud Ruins. We exit, and it disappears. What you might notice right away is the stark comparison in the art style now versus the art style in the whole other part of the game. As the shopkeeper is about to let us know, we've completely transported to the future, where instead of living in 8-bit graphics, we've swapped to a more 16-bit look. Everything pops and has more detail. I love reaching this part of the game every time I play through it. And there you have it, a big twist of the game that makes it way longer than you thought it was going to be. If you weren't sure, I'll just let you know now. The game after this point is long. I'm trying so hard to stay on topic, but there really is just so much to do after this point. And all our ninja has to say about it is neat. So we start making our way through the Cloud Ruins, the gimmick of this world being no floors, and 3 sections where we're running from this dragon friend. If we zip straight to the end of this area, the dragon friend is also our boss. This boss is tough because he opens up the floor in a variety of ways and just moves strangely in general. Regardless, this is a video game and we do slay the dragon, showing his true intentions were not that of destruction, but that of becoming our actual dragon friend. As he flies away though, this pesky guy that's been following us all game shows that he too has come to the top of the Cloud Ruins to confront you. The reveal here is that the Demon King's right-hand man has been stalking us and gathering intel about how to capture the scroll this whole time, and he dumps us straight from the sky world into the underworld. Moving into the underworld, there's really no time to mess around. Surely this demon general is waiting for us to confront him before we're able to get out of this place, so we zip on ahead, dodging variable lava levels, tricky enemy placements, and a new object to cloud step off of that alternates every time we hit it. Trials and tribulations aside though, we do obviously overcome this area, meeting face to face with the general, and there's only one way out. At this point, it's either him or us, and I think you can tell where this is going. Spoiler, we come out on top. As he can't admit defeat though, he self-destructs, bringing down a massive part of the underworld structure and bringing us plummeting down to the lake of fire below. Until we are saved by our dragon friend, of course. It's here in this moment where we learn the dragon's name is Manfred, self-owned, because his lifelong dream was to become a butler. And who better to buttle than the one who's saving the world across different planes of time, am I right? So the dragon flies us back to the regular world of the game, but this time 500 years later, and it turns out that our old ninja village has become highly developed and is being attacked again by the Demon King. This time, we save the day, and upon being asked if we're the legendary Western warrior, we realize how we fit into this big picture and hand the scroll off to our new hero, the Messenger. Godspeed. Once he's accepted his quest and takes off, we're warped away to the shop. Here is the point where we get to finally open this wardrobe in the corner we've never been allowed to open. And it's a wardrobe. We just have a ton of replacement blue robes. Basically, what we're meant to do is become the next shopkeeper in line of the blue robes to help with the next messenger in the timeline. All is going well at first. We give our messenger a charge shot, invented by Ray Troyd, and see him return a couple of times in true main character fashion. But then he doesn't return. After the shopkeeper finds this out, he tells us that we were supposed to deploy the greed demon every time the messenger dies, but we were never told to do that. So, the messenger is dead. He was meant to carry the scroll to the top of the mountain to continue into the future and become the Western warrior, yada yada, but now the prophecy can't be fulfilled. At least, not in the way that we understand it now. Since the other messenger died for real, we are tasked with being the one. We are the one messenger meant to end all of the chaos this curse brings by completing 2 cycles in the timeline, but it's also not that cut and dry. This is the point of the game where we realize that we're only about halfway through. To truly end the cycle we're in, we need to collect many more items, find 6 hidden music notes in the world to complete the music box melody, and bring the Demon King to an end. And in order to begin this journey, we portal over to the Autumn Hills. It is here that a veil is drawn from over our eyes and we find that the scroll we've been carrying this entire game was actually just a map that turns this game into a Metroidvania. Explore, find all the things, do all the things, and beat the game. There is technically plenty to cover in this section, but I'm not about to bring you through the entire music note collecting venture, nor am I going to cover all the items that grant you access to different parts of the world. There are some cool story beats happening here, such as wrapping up the story about this monk and freeing Manfred from his icy confines only to become a butler to a giant flying robot. But mostly, this section of the game is meant to bring you everywhere. We find all the power seals, unlocking a cool boomerang shuriken. We find all the music notes, which we'll get into in a second, and we find all the Phobican friends we're introduced to at the beginning. Now they can instantly take 500 years to build this bridge, and we're finally clear to confront the Demon King. Now, Forbidden Temple area is hard. What I skipped over happens to have 2 or more areas that I haven't really touched on, with bosses and everything, and they've all been ramping up difficulty up to this point. Now that we're here though, all hell breaks loose. Just from memory, I can't bring up a single room here that was easy, but I suppose that's fitting for the Demon King. Waltzing into his throne room, the Demon King doesn't move a muscle and calls for Barmathazel, his general, but to no avail. Realizing the messenger has come so far as to completely foil the Demon King's plan, he takes action, trying to kill him where he stands. In the end of it all, we simply bait him up to the top of his tower where the sunlight shines in brightly, destroying him for good as long as we keep on track. We collect our second last music note as well as the Demon King's crown. Heading back to the Tower of Time, this short blue-robed fellow pipes up about needing an item from the future we aim to prevent in order to open this portal. And we've got just the ticket. Placing the crown into the crystal hold, we enter the portal into the Abyss. In this world is infection. The Abyss is not a fun place. There are areas full of danger, fireflies that can cut straight through the world's terrain to reveal that there is no past version of this place, and, well, one music note. Collecting this final music note will likely be one of the most difficult things you've had to do in this game. As soon as you get it, you need to run away from this guy. He's insanely fast, and even though the fireflies give you a pretty straightforward path to follow, you'll still have to take it perfectly to survive. Even once we've finally claimed the note from this area, the Abyss monster breaks the portal from the one side, therefore closing it permanently. Wow, what a rush. Ready for more plot? Okay, here it comes, I'll try to keep it brief. So, the world existed, then it was flooded. Humans doing as humans do, we adapted to stay alive with what we had. A couple rose above the rest to become leaders, one named Muse, the other named Phantom. One day, demons happen across the realm and swarm. Nearly everyone died, including Muse, while defending her people. All that Phantom had left was a music box that she'd made. He took the remaining people out of the temple, hence the Forbidden Temple, and toward the sea where they could set up and begin anew, hence the Ninja Village. But Phantom was still unhappy. In a fit of rage, he stormed over to the Demon King, not knowing it would be the last move he would consciously make in his life. The Demon King laughed when Phantom entered, and as punishment for even showing up, corrupted Muse's music box with the tether to the human realm. Now, every 500 years, the demons will wipe the earth until humanity stops holding on and goes extinct. Keeping the relic's magic alive, he was forced to exist inside of the music box wearing a mask of permanent distress. He would never be calm, so the curse in the box would never be calmed. However, in whatever lapses back to sanity he could find, he knew that he could do something to help. He would need generations of helpers to be able to fight alongside each other through time. So, he wrote a scroll, imbuing it with enough power to attune its carrier to time magic, and with his last moment of sanity, sent it to the village on the shore. Many people over many generations were able to hold the scroll and complete their part of the prophecy as it's now known, all of them given the title of Messenger. Being able to traverse time, the messengers were able to step into the void and set up their headquarters there with the Tower of Time. Unfortunately, as more messengers would come around into the void, it became more obvious that not every one of them could stand the mental stress of meeting an alternate form of you from another time. So they all started to conceal their identities with long blue robes in order to maintain sanity and mental safety for all messengers going forward. They even go on to say that the blue robes helped the messengers at one point to get the music box into their own lair rather than in the hands of the Demon King, which I just think is a neat little touch. One day though, after a messenger was able to successfully collect 2 of the music notes for the music box, hope was struck. Could we possibly collect all of the cosmic musical notes in order to jump into the music box and save Phantom and end the curse entirely? Well, if you thought we weren't going to find out for ourselves, you were dead wrong. We open the music box, jump into it, and explore all the way until we find him, Phantom. As much as we try to console him, he's long lost his mind to the mask. He denies everything that we say and pretty quickly resorts to violence, and the terror of the mask is making him think that we're threatening his final memento of his wife, the music box. Off the bat, we get some Zelda-type volleyball going on, as well as phantom masks attacking in spatial rifts that conceal deadly lasers as they move. Upon defeat, Phantom lays on the ground as the mask splits from him and flies off. Everything in the music box begins to rumble, and the shopkeeper comes in to warp us out with Phantom, still distressed that he needs to let go of Muse's music box. Out of the music box, shopkeeper, the prophet, the monk, and the shorter blue robe I never quite remember the name of are waiting. After a bit of chatter, Phantom begins to freak out about the fact that the mask is coming back to claim him, and so it does. Being one with the madness, he was able to store all of the curse's powers in himself, only for it all to break out of the confines of the music box when he left it. All is looking doomed, but Shorty over here is calm as the breeze. His suggestion is an age-old classic, but he does want to do the thing once again. But Shopkeeper points out that only having 3 blue robes left in the order, they have no chance in strength. But Shorty pulls out of left field that all the characters here have been attuned with the scroll, giving them a chance to 6v1 this thing, so we give it a shot. In a climatic end, we basically challenge Voldemort as Harry Potter, eventually overpowering the mask's power, shattering it into many pieces. Strangely enough though, after the credits, we see the shopkeeper talking to yet another messenger about the story of the mask, leading me to believe there's a possibility of the time loop continuing. All we get afterwards is a to be continued. There is a DLC that takes place canonically, but only in an alternate dimension, and I think for the sake of this video's length, I'll have to come back to it another time. A lot of the story is great, and a lot of the gameplay is brand new. I can't wait to talk about it, but for now, my name is Myloe, and this was The Messenger. See you next time.